Okay, so this is a very good specific question about a dropped arch, and the specifics about the navicular bone or any other small bones within the foot, like the cuboid. We don't really need to focus on that. That is really the domain of very well-trained podiatrists. But the tibialis anterior that this person is asking about is definitely the most common implicated muscle in a fallen dropped arch. And so this person already knows it, and they're asking how you can strengthen and exercise the tibialis anterior to help with lifting the arch. And some of you already know and remember, the feet are one of my main passions in restoring because of everything that's happened to them by putting them in shoes our whole life and walking around on flat surfaces. So we'll talk a little bit about how to do this. And first thing we have to know is just where the tibialis anterior is and what it does. So its origin is at somewhere around the upper 2/3 of your lateral tibia, and it inserts into the base of your first metatarsal, that first big toe bone, and another little bone there called the cuneiform. And you'll see the next picture on the slide, just a general map of how it crosses. So the important thing to know is that it crosses the ankle joint in the front. And so you always imagine if a muscle, wherever a muscle originates and wherever it inserts, if it were to shorten, what would move? And that usually gives you pretty good detail of what it does and therefore how to strengthen, stretch it, improve it, and all the rest. And it has two main functions. One is dorsiflexion, and the other one is ankle inversion. And you'll see that in the next slide. I really can't list out all of the asanas that are specifically good for that pose, but it's good to think of it this way. Any pose that requires dorsiflexion or any pose that requires inversion of the ankle, as you saw in the previous slide, is going to be an opportunity to get that muscle its proper exercise. And so you have standing poses, so things like downward dog, very ubiquitous, very common pose that is just inescapable any class you go to, in any kind of practice you have. So that's a lot of dorsiflexion emphasis you can practice with. And then other standing poses like warrior two, triangle pose, give you the opportunity to invert the foot as well as access a little bit more of that dorsiflexion. But I actually want to show you, using a band, a good way to train the whole range of motion. Okay, so what I've done here is I've taken just a basic Thera-band, tied it to the bottom of my yoga wall, but you can tie it to anything. Just make sure it's steady. You can even tie it to like a weight, kettlebell or a dumbbell. And I tied a loop on the end of it. You want to make sure that it's about floor level because you're going to sit down and do this. Sit down right in front of it. I'm going to put this loop over my foot. Just keep the toes free so it's right over all of the heads of the metatarsals. And then you extend yourself back, keep your legs straight. And so first you could just practice dorsiflexion. You can just pull the foot back, kick out through the heel, pull the toes back, and you can always tie that in with the exhales. So you do that, and that's just dorsiflexion, and then you keep the same attachment of the wall into your foot, and you could just change the angle of your body. So then you could just focus on the inversion. So you just pull it away from the wall this way. And here's another angle on it. So I go into eversion to release, and on the inversion I contract this way. You can always get one toe or the band inside of one toe so it kind of holds on to your foot better. So you think again, you go into eversion, and on the eversion you're putting the stretch on the band. So you do this, and that's just for the inversion. And then you can sit at an angle, so then you do a little bit of both because it's that kind of a angular movement. So You relax your foot and then you go into dorsiflexion and inversion. Dorsiflexion and inversion. And you can always put your fingers right here, so it's going to be on the lateral part of your tibia, and you notice when your foot's relaxed, it doesn't feel like anything, and then as you contract, you can even see there's a little indentation of the muscle contracts. Lastly, as for the quantity and the time placement, so say if you're going to do a yoga practice or any other kind of exercise workout session, because you want to have your tibialis anterior stay nice and strong and not depleted of energy whenever you're doing your exercise or your yoga, just to avoid risking injury, do it at the end. So you would do your yoga practice and then you would do that Thera-band exercise. And if you're not going to do any exercise, just go right into the Thera-band exercise. And the idea there is that you use your tibialis anterior within your exercise or yoga, and then you just fatigue it to its limit at the end using the band. And anywhere between 20 to even 50 repetitions, 3 to 5 sets. You could do it once a day, again, at the end of a practice, or you can do it 2 to 3 times a day. All of the lower leg muscles, they're usually going to they have a prevalence of what are called the type 1 muscle fibers, and you can look at my previous posts as to the characteristics of that. And so what that means is you want to increase the repetition range instead of the load and the weight intensity range, because these muscles in the lower legs, they're made to be able to withstand long periods of exertion. And so to train them and to strengthen them, it's best to use them in the way that they evolved, which is long extended periods, so many sets over and over again. However, one last thing, because this is concerning the feet, is that other than doing specific like tibialis anterior oriented asana or exercise or using Thera-bands, never underestimate the value of walking barefoot on natural terrain. Even if you live in New York City or New Delhi, you can find a park, put your feet on some grass, put your feet on the beach, where if there's a hike nearby that doesn't have too jagged of a surface that's going to injure your feet, get yourself developed, get yourself a little bit more familiar and comfortable with walking on natural surfaces. Nothing is as good for your feet as doing that. And I cover a lot of this in my trainings with Allison, and also in my private classes.